Mizzou football has been around since the 1890s, but it wasn't until the late 1950s that the team integrated. Let me tell you about Norris, Stevenson, and Mel West. Now, to preface this, let me tell you how Columbia was in the 19th and 20th centuries. The city really reflected what was going on in the rest of the state. During the Civil War, Columbia was guarded by a Union group called the Columbia Tigers or the Fighting Tigers of Columbia. But to sum it up, that's basically where the name Missouri Tigers comes from. But Boone County in the 1860s had the third most slaves in the entire state, and Columbia was located in an area called Little Dixie. So racism plagued the area. So Columbia was extremely segregated during the Civil War. In the 1860s, that's when the first black churches began to appear in the city. And shortly thereafter, after the war, the first black school appeared in Columbia. But black people, they began to build their own businesses in the area. And if you want to go learn more about that, you can search up the Sharp End and what that was in Columbia. It's very fascinating history there. But that being said, again, Columbia was an extremely segregated city. And with that being said, the University of Missouri didn't allow black people as well. The nearest school that black people in Columbia can go to for college was Lincoln University in Jefferson City. And the University of Missouri didn't really start integrating until the 1950s. So on the football field for like the first 60 plus years of Mizzou football, they were an all-white football team and they weren't quite friendly towards integrated football teams either. In 1892, Missouri forfeited its game against Nebraska because of George Flippin, the first black college football player. And there's a reason why Missouri and Iowa didn't play for nearly 100 years. And in 1940, students at New York University protested a gentleman's agreement between NYU and Mizzou to exclude black players from their contest. Now, Don Farrow is probably the most influential coach in Mizzou history, but his teams never had a black player. But after he retired in 1956, following a 15-13 awesome win over Kansas, he maintained his athletic director duties and was in charge of finding his replacement. That man was Frank Broyles. Now, Frank Broyles only stayed in Columbia for 1 year before going and having a Hall of Fame career at the University of Arkansas, but he would do something that had never been done in the university's history. He would integrate the football roster. He did this because, when before he was hired, Don Farrow had a plan called the Missouri Plan, which he only recruited Missouri players. Broyles said that he would work under this plan if he was allowed to recruit black players as well. And that led to Norris, Stevenson, and Mel West. Now, Stevenson was from St. Louis, went to Vashon High School, and in 1957, he officially became the first black football player to receive a scholarship from the University of Missouri. West followed shortly thereafter, and he was from the state's capital in Jefferson City. Both players played running back and both officially recorded their first statistics in 1958. And in 1958, Missouri was the last team of the original Big Eight teams that I believe integrated. In 1958 was also the year that Dan Devine took over, who I believe is the best coach in Mizzou history. West led Missouri in 1958 in rushing, while Stevenson was a key contributor. And Missouri recorded its best conference record that it had in a few years. Now, in 1959, after I believe it was a 2-3 start, Mizzou won 4 of 5 of its last Big Seven games, beat Kansas in Lawrence, and earned its first Orange Bowl appearance since 1939. Kind of really the best 2-year stretch for the program since kind of the end towards or after the second Of course, the team ran into some racial issues after a game in College Station against Texas A&M. A restaurant refused to serve the team because of West and Stevenson, and it was an incident that caused Dan Devine to really break down because he thought that he had let the team down. And then in Columbia, kind of the same incident happened with West in attendance. But as they were walking out, a manager said, that was a good game yesterday, Mel. And you can really just see how irritating that is. But Stevenson and West were still respected by the team. And in 1960, that's really the year that changed kind of everything for Mizzou football on a national level, in my opinion. West and Stevenson were both seniors and were a part of a loaded senior class that included Danny LaRose, an All American, quarterback Ron Taylor, and even young future stars and future Pittsburgh Steelers great Andy Russell and former Indianapolis Colts general manager Bill Tobin. And offensively, West and Stevenson stole the show. For the third straight year, Mel West led Mizzou in rushing, and Stevenson's 7.2 yards per carry led the entire Big Eight. They both combined for 1,300 yards on the offensive side of the ball. The team ranked fourth nationally with 27.4 points per game, and defensively, they were great too. They didn't allow more than 10 points until mid-November. Overall, this team ruled. But the team's most significant game came on November 12th, 1960 in Norman, Oklahoma. 2 years prior to this game in 1958, Mizzou lost out on a conference title as they got throttled in Norman 39-0 to the Sooners. And after the game, Devine noticed the team's morale was down. Norris Stevenson sat kind of in the back of the locker room with his head down. But Devine promised that in 2 years they would come back in Norman and leave victorious. So now back to 1960, Mizzou was undefeated, the number 2 team in the nation with how things were going. And in Norman, a place they hadn't won since 1936, Stevenson gashed the Sooners for 169 yards and 2 scores of 60 and 79 yards. Mizzou defeated Oklahoma 41-19 and fulfilled Devine's promise, gave OU their first conference home loss in 18 years. But more importantly, it propelled Mizzou into the number 1 ranking nationally, something that's only happened twice in their history. But unfortunately, the next week, Mizzou lost to Kansas, spoiling its national title hopes. But they lost in an unethical way. Kansas used an ineligible player, which gave Mizzou the Big 8 title. And by rules, Mizzou really finished the season undefeated. And also with the Kansas forfeit, they received their second straight Orange Bowl bid against Navy, who had the Heisman Trophy winner that year. And ironically, the game was broadcasted by Paul Chrisman, who to that point was the greatest quarterback in Mizzou history, and they played that game in front of John F. Kennedy as well. And Mizzou won the game 21-14 over Navy, the first bowl victory in the program's history. West finished his collegiate career leading the team in rushing with 108 yards in the game, while Stevenson added 37 more and completing one of the best seasons in Mizzou history. After their careers at Mizzou, both Norris Stevenson and Mel West played professionally. Stevenson played in the CFL for the BC Lions, while West played in the American Football League for the Patriots and Jets. But both continued to make an impact long after their playing careers. West returned to Mizzou to get his master's before being a principal in the Twin Cities, while Stevenson coached track and field in the state of Missouri for over 30 years. Now, Mel West passed away in 2003 and Norris Stevenson in 2012, but it's just important to remember that their impact on Mizzou football is legendary. They helped kick off a golden age for the program. After 1960, Mizzou compiled a record of 66-22 from 1961 and 1969, winning a conference title in 1969 and played in some prestigious bowl games in 65 and 68 in the Sugar and Gator Bowls, winning both of those games. And they did this with black talent as well. Johnny Rowland was the NFL's Rookie of the Year in 1966. Francis P. and Russ Washington were top 10 picks in the mid to late 1960s. And going into the 1970s, where Mizzou was known as the Giant Killers, they had a lot of players go on to the NFL. Mel Gray was a 4-time Pro Bowler. Tony Galbraith won a Super Bowl with the Giants. James Wilder is the Buccaneers' all-time rushing leader. We know who Kellen Winslow is. Lewis, Eric Wright, a great cornerback for the 49ers, and my uncle Leo Lewis played 11 years for the Minnesota Vikings. But it all started with Mel West and Norris Stevenson, two pioneers in Columbia.